Welcome to STEMMY Conversations. STEMMY Conversations is a podcast brought to you by myself, Stephanie Simon, and Kenita Roberts, with the aim of educating youths about careers in the fields of STEM and ICT. Today we have a guest, Mr. Ryan Robinson. So, hi Steph, how are you doing?
Hey Brad, I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm good. Hi Ryan, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm great. Thanks so much for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Okay, so what is the career you pursued? What is the name of the career you went after?
Say that again. What was the career pursuit and what was the second part of the question?
What is the name of the career you went after or you pursued?
Oh, so the career I pursued is entrepreneurship. Making my own business, specifically in the tech space, so tech entrepreneurship. So things like startups, companies like Facebook and Google and Microsoft, that type of pathway. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So how is STEM or ICT integrated into your career?
How is STEM integrated in my career?
Correct, yes.
Oh man, well, it's really exciting because for what I do, it's being on the top of STEM. It's innovating on top of STEM. It's seeing what is currently been done in technology and taking it a step further. And so you're looking at it's very humanities based. First of all, I'll say that you have to understand how humans work, how societies work, how economics works, all these very human-based fields, psychology, and STEM then goes into that and saying, okay, how can we help humans? How can we help people? How can we help people be healthier with our COVID testing? How can we create new medications? How can we make things go faster in terms of innovation? So we created a cloud computing platform called Collective Computing that I created, Collective Computing. So it really, STEM is core, of course, to what I do, because you're looking at what's been done before and what can you do that's different and new. So you're constantly being aware of the past and current trends, and then having a sense of what can be done in the future. And so you're bridging the gap between the theoretical technology, things that theoretically can be done, and what currently exists in the world. So it's a really, really awesome position.
Okay, thank you. What are the requirements to pursue such a career? What does it require you? Maybe what university you went to and stuff like that.
So I went to MIT and I studied both STEM and humanities. I studied in the humanities side, I studied international humanities. Everything from literature to film theory to poetry to international business. So I did a paper, for instance, on Sony. I did a paper on the interview process and bias against women in the interview process. On the STEM side, I did a little bit of everything there too. I did something called mechatronics, which is a combination of all the engineering fields: mechanical, electrical, computers, systems, materials. I even took a class called how to make almost anything. Not everything, but almost everything. So really exciting stuff. And I made my own major, as you guys probably know. This was in different articles, is I made my own major called quantum engineering while I was at MIT. Quantum engineering, which is the field that I created, major that I created, that looks at creating new quantum technology that's never been done before.
All right, thank you. So if somebody wants to go to MIT, what are the requirements to go to MIT?
Oh man, well, I would say one is you have to really love STEM. That's number one. You have to love what you're doing, and you have to, of course, get good grades. That's obvious. You gotta get really good grades, as best grades you can get. And I would say, really, the big thing is you have to. What MIT looks for in students is someone that uses their resources very well, very well. So for instance, I didn't go to like a great school. I went to a public school in Florida, which Florida is known for education. And so, but what I did is I used all the resources I had available to me. I was in all the clubs. I took all did all the resources, everything. I was just very integrated into my ecosystem. And because of that, I was able to excel within the context of where I was. And MIT noticed that, and they just can compare it to where I was coming from. And because what they're looking for, what these schools are looking for, like MIT, are students that are very good at using their resources. Because basically when you get accepted to these schools, they're putting a lot into you, right? You're taking a select spot. There's a bunch of people applying. You're one of the few that get selected. And you're also, they're providing you a lot of opportunities, a lot of different clubs and everything like that. So I think that what they're looking for, again, are students that, even if you don't have perfect grades, even if you have perfect test scores, it's people that stand out by how well they can use the resources around them. So if you just do well at a good school that's already doing really well, then that's not as impressive as doing maybe above average at a school that's maybe below average, or maybe doesn't have that many resources.
All right, thank you. Stephanie, you have any questions for Ryan?
Yes. So far, everything I've heard is awesome. So hats off to you. But the question I would like to ask is, what are some of the challenges you would have faced as an entrepreneur?
Oh man, well, thank you so much. In terms of challenges, I would say so. STEM. So we're talking about in the context of STEM first, and I'll transition over. So STEM, is very meritocratic, right? It's about like learning and knowing your formulas and knowing your equations, really knowing your stuff. That's really, really important. But business is a very different game. Entrepreneurship is a very different game. It's more, like I said, humanities based. That's actually why I started out like that, talking about humanities, because even if, say you have two people and you have one guy that knows all the equations, but then you maybe have one lady who knows all the people, doesn't know any equations. The lady who knows all the people is going to do much better in entrepreneurship than the guy that knows all the equations. Because in business, it's very much so based on, just being able to get resources, like I said, but being able to leverage your network to get to where you want to go, whether it be funding, product development, whatever it may be, marketing, press. You have to know somebody, because even if you're Einstein, is that you only have 24 hours in a day, and there's only so much you can do, at least compared to like a machine that has a million people in it. So that's the thing I would say, is that the challenge in general going from STEM to entrepreneurship is you have to really do both. So I would say my specialty is being able to do both, being able to be in the humanities world, be in the business world, but also being able to be in the tech world. So I can be friends with engineers and talk about computational biophysics or quantum mechanics or astrophysics, and I can be very comfortable. But I can also be very comfortable talking about business trends and finance and how the economy is working. So that's really important, and that's specifically what my natural gifts are. And then I obviously train those to be even better by having deeper understandings of these fields. So I'd say that's the general challenge. It's a different type of game, number one. Number two is, I would say, is that thereby the biggest challenge I think you'll find is finding the right people. I would say usually if you would ask basically anybody else that question, one thing they might say is fundraising, raising funding for your business, which is true. But I would say this, there is a lot of money out there. I would say that's something I really want to emphasize. There is the money out there for kids who want to go to schools that are really top notch, or maybe they think their parents can afford it. Those schools will pay you to go to these schools if the need is there. So the money is out there, but it's finding the right person with the right money. That's the most important part, because when you're taking in money for your business or whatever it may be, you're also taking in that person's personality. And so you'll go much farther by sort of not taking money early on and then getting to a position where you have the right people in front of you with the good amount of funding that you need, as opposed to bringing in the quote unquote the wrong people or bad personalities, but they have the funding that you want. So that's what I would say there is that, again, still comes on the network. And then the last challenge I would say is balance, because as an entrepreneur, you become the embodiment of your business. So if you lose an hour of time, that's an hour that you could have empowered your organization, right? Issued out communication, marching orders, action items, everything. Could have done another meeting, so on and so on. So you have to really automate your life in a certain way, and it becomes a lifestyle. And because it becomes a lifestyle, it becomes challenging to balance it. Usually people tend to make it more work than play. I think that's usually the challenge for people, is that you kind of work yourself into the grave. And so you have to balance that by, again, having people that are around you that are good team members, that are reliable, very important, reliable. For Conduit, my company, we have three C's. I call them the three C's for every person that comes on that they have to have, which is, number one is character. They have to have character. That's the first thing. It doesn't matter if they have the super brilliant, you got to have character. Then two, they have to be consistent. You know, they got to have the time availability and the communication skills to be consistent. And three is then contribution, of course. You know, you have to be adding something to the equation, adding something to the company. Because, you know, that's the worst thing, is to have someone that maybe that's not really adding. Everyone's got to add to it and make it grow. You know, it's a seed and you want to water it. And it's a really great journey, entrepreneurship. You get to learn a lot. You get to make really great friends. It really isn't like a typical company where, you know, they're working under you. You're kind of more so working together. It's a little more equal. So you really want to have people that you can trust their character, that they're consistent, they're reliable. And three, again, the third C is that they're able to contribute and really add a difference to where you guys are going.
Right. Awesome. So I would have learned today about the three C's. So I'm going to keep that in mind. And I hope that the viewers that are watching keep this in mind as well. There are three main things that you should look at: the character, your contribution, and consistency. So thank you so much for that, Mr. Robinson.
Anytime.
Over to you, Bradley.
Yes, that is really nice. I actually learned a lot too. And what I've noticed is a lot of our guests, they're mentioning networking or practically knowing people, because for me, it helps a lot. It helps a lot. So thank you for that. And one last question. No, two last questions actually. What advice would you give to young persons who may want to follow in your footsteps or may want to pursue a career similar like yours?
Oh man, I would say, the one word I would use would be love. The one word I would use is love, because everything you do has to emanate from a place of love. And so I'm going to explain that from a few different perspectives. So one, in terms of your motivation. So if you do something that's not out of love, right? So you want to do it out of pride. You want to be Mr. Hotshot or Mrs. Hotshot, or you want to whatever. Maybe if it's a certain person, they might want to do it to get attention or press or what have you, be famous, that's cool too. But I'm saying love because those fuels. If you think about it like a car, think of yourself as a car for a second. If you fuel your car with mainly pride, ego, lust, greed, even just trying to get money, is that what's going to happen is that it's going to burn you up on the inside. It's going to burn you up on the inside. And it's going to make it hard for you to maintain that long term. Specifically for companies, you know, even though companies obviously are known for making a lot of money, is that they're so hard to do. They're so challenging that you can't really do them unless you love what you're doing. So for me, for instance, you know, going to MIT, I'm fortunate enough, I'm very blessed that I am offered different career opportunities even before I started the company. And so if money was really my goal, then I would have already, I wouldn't do a company, because I would have already gotten the resources I wanted. And on that note, really quick, I just want to say is that for money, remember that your studies show that your happiness doesn't increase after a certain amount of income. You know, so someone who's making $1 million, or someone who's making, you know, say 100,000 or 80,000, you will find there's not that big of a difference in terms of their happiness that you might expect. Usually the benefit of money comes from not having to worry about money. So again, from a motivation perspective, love is important because it's going to be the thing that sustains you. That's number one. Number two, in terms of, like I said, networking, is that, you know, networking is really, really important. And I found that for networking, if you try and go into it with just trying to kind of get something out of the other person, it's going to be an empty interaction. You're not really going to get as much out of it unless you really approach it out of love. Like, you want to learn more about this person, you want to learn more about what they're doing, what causes they're doing, or just enjoy networking. You just enjoy meeting people. For me, I just enjoy hanging out with people and meeting people. And if I'm not working, I'm usually hosting a party and I'm hanging with my friends and inviting people over. So again, love from a networking perspective is very, very important. And then 3, love in terms of your what you work on, your passion, right? So don't do something just because you think it's going to make you a lot of money. It very well may make you a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time is that usually the positions that require you, that make you a lot of money require a lot of work, a lot of work. And so what'll happen is you'll make a lot of money, right? But you won't have the time to enjoy the money. You won't have the time to enjoy the money. And that's where it gets challenging. So I was just talking to actually a friend of mine the other day who got offered a higher position with more money. And I told her, I said, listen, that, obviously balance, you want to be able to provide for yourself, but it's important that you have happiness in what you're doing, because you think about it, you're sleeping about 8 hours a day, you're working 8 hours a day. So whatever you're doing for your work, you're going to be doing that more than you're going to be with your partner, with your kids, whomever. So your work, because it's taking up at least a third of your life and half of your waking hours, it's got to be something you love. And in terms of applying to college, I know a lot of the people we're speaking to are the youth, is if you want to go to these schools like MIT and Harvard, the way to stand out is, again, to really just pursue what you love. So for me, I love business. So I did business competitions, won on first place on an international level, did math competitions, but I did all of it because I loved it. Because if you're just trying to follow the formula, I'll say this, going back to passion. So we said for love, there's motivation. Then there's also for networking, for meeting people. And the third thing was for passion, is that love is important in terms of regards to passion and following what you want to do. Because if you just try and follow the formula of what you think is expected, then you're just going to look like everybody else. It's going to look like everybody else. So that really weird thing that you like to do that only you is into, or maybe 10 people in the world is into, that's really is what's going to make you stand out, both on a college level and on a professional level. So remember that love is the most important thing.
All right, thank you so much for that, for those perspectives. Because to me, I learned a lot, and I'm sure our viewers out there, they would listen and they would also learn and pick up from and utilize what you would have mentioned. Stephanie, is there anything else you'd like to say to Ryan?
One thing, you said you studied at MIT, right? Could you give us like a briefing as to what your journey was like through your university years?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I finished high school, I'm going to MIT. For me, I was the salutatorian for my school in high school. So I was like the top student there. So going to MIT just from that perspective was obviously very interesting, because all the students are top students. And you immediately find, day one, things like SAT scores and rank, stuff like that just don't matter. So say you're like 6'6", right? And that's cool, but if you're in a room of 6'6" people, it doesn't matter anymore, Not that I was ever bent on, rank, but just I'm saying from this perspective of how maybe the world might perceive you, what might motivate you. It's gonna be a different world, it's a different world. That's number one. So that was great, because it allowed for me, by being with people that were my peers in that way, allowed for it basically forced me to grow in other ways socially, and so that was really, really nice. I enjoyed that, being able to interact with people. And maybe and previously in high school, where my academics were the biggest thing people knew about me, now I had an opportunity to, again, explore things socially and just kind of be, in a way, kind of regular, right? And restart your identity and explore new parts of yourself. So that's one thing I really love. And on that note, though, of course, academically, very, 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 very rigorous, of course. We're ranked number 1 in the school in the world. So from a rigor perspective, the challenge rigor in terms of academics, it wasn't just like they gave you really hard homework. It wasn't that. It was the challenge of basically figuring out really hard problems. This is a simple answer. Meaning that they might tell you, I'll give you an example. They gave me when we were studying electrodynamics, they gave me an equation for electrons. Okay, this is how an electron is attracted to another electron. And you say, okay, you write down in your notes, right? So normally your homework is, what if the charge of an electron is 2 or something like that? And you plug it into the formula and you do 10 problems like that. And, you discuss it with your teacher. It's like that type of thing. At MIT, the homework might be you're an astronaut floating in space and you've got a flux of gamma over 2 and there's electrons hitting you 10,000 per second. And you've got to calculate the flux as you're rotating around the sun at, pi over 6 radians. How many electrons do you feel over half of a revolution around the sun? So very, very, they stretch your thinking. It's really about thinking at a certain point about how can you apply knowledge? How can you think outside the box? How can you apply what you know to get from A to B when A to B is not so clear, where it's very murky, where it's not, okay, you think about it sort of a path, it goes from instead of walking on, step by step to now where you've got to make these huge jumps in your thinking and really explore different ways of looking at a problem. And then of course you're doing it with a bunch of other competing demands, right? Because you're taking other classes and you've got life to deal with too. So just again, the balancing act. If you find a lot of things in life by themselves aren't necessarily hard, right? It's just when you add everything together. So school sometimes often isn't hard. It's kind of okay, school with maybe your, dating life and then your family life and then your own life, your personal life. That's what kind of makes things challenging. So with MIT, the challenge is really, again, like I said, balancing it. And finally is the mental stamina, talking about academic rigor, because you're in Boston, which is, it can get, I'm from Miami and my family's from the Bahamas. We're very sun loving people. And Boston is very cold and it can get very dark and depressing. So what will happen is you're going to school at 8 o'clock in the morning, it's pitch dark outside. You finish class at maybe 4 p.m., it's pitch dark outside. So now you're working on your essay that's 20 pages long, it's pitch dark outside. So it's a lot of that. It was a lot of that. It was mental stamina, requiring you to not just be smart, right? But to have the mental endurance to make it through that for 4 years, day in, day out, and constantly learning new information. So that's the academic aspect. So that was number one. And then number two, from a social aspect, I kind of mentioned that before, but that was really nice in terms of allowing my identity to grow. But also, but also is of course, it's being on your own, like any college, and you having to see who you are without your parents there. There's a little less support when your teachers won't call you after class if you're struggling with your homework, or no one's forcing you to go to class. And so it really demands of you to basically ask, who are you? Who are you going to decide to be? And that can change, of course, over 4 years, but you really have to have a sense of your own resilience, your own work ethic, in a way that doesn't really exist the same way in high school, even if you took AP classes. And finally, I would say, in terms of the completion of MIT, finishing out MIT and then going into the real world, is you really appreciate community, which I know technically goes in socialization, but it's a little different. The real world, I know because we're talking to a lot of young people here, honestly, it's pretty boring. It's pretty boring. You're not missing anything. There's a lot of bills. And for what I do, entrepreneurship, it's basically doing a lot of homework and then with no money, and then figure out how to make the money and solve the problem at the same time. And, and get the people that are working on the homework with you. So it's really starting from the ground up. And of course, eventually you make money and you make connections and you make friends, but everyone's got to start somewhere, And so my point being, I said community is with MIT is that it really provided a nice community for the people that are there. Again, like I said, that social aspect, the peer aspect, but really just feeling a part of something. I think with the real world, the challenge with the quote unquote the real world is that you don't really feel like a part of something is the big thing. You feel just kind of a blob of the world, and you have to deal with politics and ask yourself how the news is going to affect your day-to-day life and gas prices. And, but school, being in college, especially MIT, does a really great job of making you feel like you're a part of this big struggle between your class and the college itself. And you're all striving to overcome something. And that's something that I take with me into business and entrepreneurship and the Conduit, where we really have that sense of, again, community and having challenges and overcoming those challenges as a way to become better versions of ourselves, which is the most exciting part for me, which again is being a part of a group that's collectively becoming better every day.
Thank you so much for that brief journey about university. That's pretty cool, and you learn a lot of things along the way, and it's about adjusting,
Yeah.
adapting. So if you don't have the two of that, what you really doing? So that's a part of your journey. So thank you so much for that. Over to you, Bradley.
All right. Thank you so much, Ryan, for sharing with our audience about your journey and about MIT. For our viewers out there, be sure to follow us on our social media platforms. That is on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Anchor, and TikTok. Again, thank you for sharing, Ryan.
Anytime. Thanks so much for having me, guys. I'm grateful to be here.